Hello everybody, and welcome again to my channel. This time I wanted to talk a little bit about leaving the group. So, what causes somebody to remain as a member of a high control group, whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses or something else? Is it because the doctrines are so logically sound that it's just hard to convince them that they're not true? Well, I personally don't think that's the case, because it really only takes 5 minutes using Watchtower literature to demonstrate that their teachings cannot possibly be true. And if you read their literature from the standpoint of someone who's not indoctrinated, it's really not very impressive. So I don't believe that logic is the issue here. I believe that what is the issue is the fear that is instilled in people by the Watchtower that keeps them there. And to back this up, if you think about it, the Watchtower teaches people not to look at things that disagree with the Watchtower precisely because of how easy it is to disprove their teachings. So logic and reason are not what keep people as members of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's the fear that they have. They're instilled with fear of people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. They have fear of leaving the organization. They have fear of allowing themselves to question what they are taught. They have fear of people who have left the organization and who will share with them the things that they have taught. And this is kind of complicated by the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses only associate with other Jehovah's Witnesses. So in their daily life, they may come across people that aren't witnesses, but typically speaking, those people won't be their good friend, and they'll view them slightly differently. So the witness or any high control group member builds their entire life around other members of the group. So between that and the fear they have of leaving, my personal belief is that that is what keeps people in such situations. Now, if you think about fear, a really deep-seated irrational fear is called a phobia. Those are things that people are afraid of for no true rational reason. And the Watchtower builds up in people pretty much a phobia of leaving. So that deep-seated fear is a very powerful motivator, because emotions are actually what directs people's thinking. And this is something that was told to me by my friend in Ireland that is skilled in the art, shall we say, has the credentials. But that makes a lot of sense. If people are too afraid to consider the possibility that they are being lied to by basically a corporation, they won't allow themselves to see that, even when presented with overwhelming evidence. So that's why some of us have probably had the experience where we have presented overwhelming evidence to individuals who have been thoroughly indoctrinated. And those individuals usually either ignore what we're presenting, or they begin to call us, basically insinuate that we're evil people or what have you. Because at that point, the fear has overtaken their mind. They're not allowing themselves to think about it, and they're trying to push away any evidence that disproves what they might believe. So, my friend kind of talked about coming out of the group and overcoming the fear as being similar to something such as overcoming an addiction. And the steps that they mentioned in that, there are a couple. They talked about pre-contemplation, and that's where people cannot see that they actually have a problem. Then there's contemplation, where they realize that there is a problem, but they also realize that there's going to be a high price to pay for them to solve that problem. Then there's the point of action, where they think that solving the problem is going to be worth the cost because there's something better in life for solving the problem. And we'll come back to that. Then after the problem is solved, there's maintenance, keeping up doing the right thing on a day-to-day basis to stay away from the problem. But then many people have relapses, and that's when you fall back into having that same problem. And that might be because some event triggered it. It might be that they didn't know themselves as well as they thought they did, or there could be many reasons. But relapses can also be learning experiences. People learn what their triggers are, they learn something about themselves, and oftentimes they might actually be strengthened a little bit after they come out of their relapse. And the relapse can lead back to the same cycle with pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, maintenance, so on and so forth. So relapses happen, but hopefully they're overcome, and hopefully they don't happen very often. And eventually, hopefully it gets to the point where they don't happen at all. But that's an interesting model, and it does kind of describe what many people go through as they're realizing what the Watchtower really is and deciding whether or not to leave it. But the key step, in my opinion, is the step of action. It's the point at which they realize that there is a better life out there without the Watchtower. And it can be really difficult to convince people of that, because when you are in the Watchtower, as I've said, your entire social structure is built based upon the Watchtower. So there has to be something much better on the other side, because what they're looking at is they're looking at leaving all of their friends and possibly their family, and having people consider them to be a horrible, evil person. And that's a very big hurdle for a lot of people to face. So there are many people that realize that the Watchtower is not what it claims to be, yet they stay within the religion because it's their entire social structure. So to them, there is not sufficient value for them to change the situation. So that has to be part of the equation for us, and if there are individuals that we know or that we're trying to help, that has to be part of the solution for them as well. They have to see something good enough that makes it worth it to go through all the pain of leaving. And there certainly is pain that's associated with leaving. For example, you can do a Google search about leaving high control groups, and you'll find a number of different websites that talk about it. And there are things that you go through when you're leaving such a situation. This is just because of what has emotionally been done to you during all those years that you've been in that group. Now, myself, when I left, basically what happened is I got myself into a situation in life whereby I had two choices. I could stay in a situation that was making me miserable, or I could allow myself to put my fears behind and look into what was really going on and make my decision based upon that. And in my particular case, that latter decision actually had a better outcome, and I could tell. In fact, it was a much better outcome, no matter how bad it was going to be, so for me, it was worth it to make that decision. And looking back, I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form. It took me a while to build up to the point where I was ready to do what I knew needed to be done. But when I did it, I went through many of the things that I'd read about online. And despite the fact I was aware of what was going to happen, I couldn't stop it. It was something that I just had to experience. But now that that's over and done with and in the past, the further away I get from the situation, the better life is for me. So really, this is one of those times where I can say my only disappointment with the process is that I didn't do it sooner, which is ironic because oftentimes Watchtower publications or discourses where people are talking about how they're now full-time servants for the Watchtower Corporation, they'll say, or it will be said of them, that their only regret was that they didn't start sooner. But in those cases, typically for most people, I would imagine that's not true. So in this case, though, with leaving that group, it is really true. I really do wish that I had done it earlier because I'd be further along. But that's kind of the way the whole situation works. And an important thing to keep in mind, too, is that as humans, we are social individuals, if you will. We all need to have a support system, people to interact with, people to talk about, so on and so forth. So if you're leaving, you want to make sure and build that support group before you actually leave. Because if you leave and you have nothing to go to, it's going to be a massive blow and it could be quite destructive. So this is something too that we want to realize about those of our friends and family that are still in, is that they're not thinking about leaving. To them, the fear is keeping them in. They don't see something better outside. And on top of that, they most likely don't have a support group outside of the Watchtower. So those are all extremely high challenges that they would have to overcome for them to come out. And we can't necessarily eliminate those for people, or we cannot necessarily help them to understand the benefits of going through that. Some people we can, some people we can't. But taking a chance and trying to do that can be a risky prospect. So anyways, though, really the main thing, I believe, with coming out or with waking people up or any of that is overcoming the massive amount of fear that has been instilled in us and in Watchtower's followers by the Watchtower system. The fear is the big enemy that is keeping people in that system. So, those are some thoughts, and once again, I always encourage you to do research on anything that I talk about. Never just take my word for it. There are people who will express this better than I can. And I have input from a very good source, my friend in Ireland, but they would certainly express this better than I would. So do yourself a favor and do the research. Arm yourself with knowledge, because knowledge is power. And that's, again, the specific reason why the Watchtower does not want people to have knowledge, is because that knowledge is the power to overcome their fear. So hopefully this is something that was helpful, and I will talk to you next time.